What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Halo Infinite video. And in this video, we gotta talk about swapping to freaking controller. ONYX mouse and keyboard, swapping to controller. What actually happened? What are the tips and tricks I learned? There's a lot we gotta talk about, but go to the GameLeap website right now. For those of you who want in-depth breakdowns of the decision-making, mistakes, and tips and tricks that you can incorporate in your games to climb to ONYX and above, go check it out right now down below. Now, thank you for all your controller suggestions. I ended up getting the Elite 2 controller, and damn, this controller is high freaking tech. The last controller I used was the Xbox 360 controller, which didn't have any of the back buttons, didn't have the customizable, all of the stuff that is on an Elite 2 controller. It's actually crazy how far it's gone. But the first big takeaway that I wanted to talk about when I started playing is it is very hard to make proper decisions when your mechanics don't do what you want them to do. I have all this game knowledge and how to play the game and stuff like that, but it's very hard to play strategically correct when you can't even trust your mechanics. Because honestly, after not playing with a controller for 6+ years, and back when I did play with a controller, I always played casually. I never actually went full tryhard like I do these days with mouse and keyboard. So basically, I could not trust my mechanics. I absolutely sucked for a while, and it was very hard for me to make proper decision making without that base level mechanical skill. And I think that that really talks to being comfortable and confident in your mechanics. It's gonna allow you to fundamentally make more aggressive plays, be smarter strategically, and I think it's one of the most important things you need to nail down. You can't think about all this other stuff if your mechanics are not on point. Now, I played 3 free-for-all games, got absolutely bodied, and then jumped right into ranked for solo duo controller, because it's the only one that I don't have placed yet. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I just got freaking rolled for like the first 5+ games. I mean, I was really getting rolled throughout most of my placements. Now, the thing is, I would always get more comfortable and I felt like I was getting better, and then the next game I would get rolled again. It felt like my opponents were just getting better and better and better, and I wasn't. And I really thought I was in bot lobbies for most of my games. I actually did, and I just felt like I was gonna get placed in gold or something like that. But it actually placed me in the highest rank that you could possibly get placed, in freaking D1. And I looked at my last game where we lost, but we barely lost, and 3 of my opponents were ONYX. Now, this actually completely shocked me because I really thought I was playing in very low lobbies, but it actually tells me a little bit about the rank system as a whole. And I really think that one of the reasons I felt like I was playing so bad is the game was constantly putting me up against better and better people slowly as I was improving, and it made me feel like I just wasn't improving. I didn't look at anyone's ranks I was playing with until I won the last game and I got surprise placed in diamond. Like, I had no idea that that was gonna happen. Now, on top of that, I'm pretty sure if I played in the crossplay mode, I would get absolutely destroyed. And it's very similar when we do mouse and keyboard solo duo. The competition of mouse and keyboard solo duo is way freaking easier than crossplay, and I'm fairly sure it's the same thing for controller only. If you want the most competitive game, you need to be going into the crossplay mode. That's where just the most amount of talent. Now, sure, the higher ranks in ONYX in crossplay are going to be majority controller. However, I think that there's a lot of mouse and keyboard players in low ONYX and high diamond that are like litmus tests, where until you get to a certain level of skill with a controller, you're not going to be able to beat these players. Because honestly, if I took my mouse and keyboard play and I dropped it right into the ONYX level lobbies that I was playing in controller only, I would annihilate them. But then I go into crossplay mouse and keyboard and I get annihilated by higher level controller players. So that's something that's interesting. Now, my second big takeaway is that aim assist does not make or break you. I know that some of you mouse and keyboard players have tried controller and you're like, oh, it's broken, blah, 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 blah. You talk about aim assist, right? And yes, it's there, it's noticeable, but there's so much skill that goes over top of that, it honestly does not matter at all. Oftentimes, I would lose straight up fights because my crosshair placement was absolute trash. And that's one of the biggest keys, is you have to have your crosshair placement for where it's most optimal for the engagement. And what I mean by that is, specifically in a regular fight with someone, you want to have your crosshair placement set around their chest level because you want to hit every single one of your shots. But then when their shields are broken, you have to adjust your crosshair placement for their head. And the thing is, not only can that be pretty difficult to do because you have to use your right analog stick, but at the same time, the enemy is going to be altering their headshot hitbox. They're going to jump around a corner. They're going to peek out, jump around the corner, and you have no idea where their head's going to be. They're going to crouch spam. They're going to move left and right. And it can be really difficult. I'm not going to lie. It took me a while to get used to it, and I was getting absolutely shit on. On top of that, even up against these low ONYX players, they were not hitting every shot on me. In fact, on mouse and keyboard, I'm fairly certain that I would be more mechanically accurate than these players, but that's definitely because it's low ONYX players, and honestly, I get completely bodied by controller players who master the proper fundamentals and can utilize aim assist in the mid fights, but that still requires a ton of skill. So it's really important to get away from the narrative that it doesn't, because if you really think that, go whip up a controller and go play a whole bunch of games, and you'll probably change your mind after you get rolled like me. Now, something that's really important is that pre-aiming spots and peeking is still one of the most effective ways to challenge enemies, and players are not doing it. And I think this is one of the big skill gaps, and it has to do with identifying where enemies are and pre-aiming or pre-scoping towards that direction before you peek out. So you're already ready to fire. And this is something that I did often where I knew an enemy would be long, or I would guess that there would be an enemy like down a long sight line. And before I even swing out, I zoom in, I know exactly the angle that I'm gonna look at, and then I swing out already looking scoped in at that angle. This typically allowed me to get first shot. If enemies were low, I could get free kills, and I think that this is something that is not commonplace in a lot of the lower ranks in Halo Infinite. This was probably why I was able to get a leg up on my competition. Even if I wasn't perfectly comfortable with the controls, I still understood the proper way to peek and the proper way to challenge, and these fundamentals are incredibly important, and I think it's one of the big ways that you can distinguish yourself from a lot of other players just playing in controller in general. Now, the next big thing that I wanted to talk about is that accuracy doesn't matter. At the beginning, I wasn't getting crazy high accuracy, and I thought, oh man, I'm just not good enough yet. But that was back before I thought I was gonna be placed in gold lobbies, and I really wasn't. I was placed quite high. Of course, it's definitely super inflated, but the thing that you need to understand is that accuracy can be fundamentally reduced by using correct strategies. So pre-aiming and pre-firing corners got me a lot of kills. I saw an enemy starting to move out of the corner, and I would fire. It wouldn't hit them all, but it would do some fire to them before they even fully were peeking me. So it would descope them automatically. It would do some free damage, but it wasn't perfectly accurate every time. A lot of times I would fire and they wouldn't peek out, and it was just a pre-fire that cost me almost nothing and cost them basically just a second to peek. Now, on top of that, there's a lot of weapons that will artificially lower your accuracy, and I think that way too many players put stock into the accuracy when really it doesn't matter all that much. And I think that if we could have like very specific statistics about like a one-on-one gunfight from mid-range with a BR, then maybe accuracy would matter. But if you take accuracy over the course of the entire game, the way that it's played and the proper way to play with things like pre-aiming and pre-firing, accuracy really doesn't paint the proper picture here. Now, the last big takeaway that I wanted to talk about on controller is that movement is so freaking hard. This is something that I'm gonna have to practice a lot. And when I watch pro players like Lucid have god-tier movement on controller, like, man, he's like another animal. It didn't look like god-tier movement before, but realizing it after I played controller, it is definitely freaking god-tier movement. I mean, trying to melee people is like impossible. If someone runs by me and I have to turn around trying to melee them, Jesus Christ, good freaking luck. The game just feels different on controller, honestly. It feels like a completely different game, and it's really, really freaking fun. I actually almost like the game a little bit better on controller. It's kind of weird to explain why. It just feels more fun. Maybe I'm getting hit with that nostalgia of like playing Halo 3 and playing Halo 2. I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm having a lot of fun. I'm gonna keep grinding the controller. I'm definitely gonna try to grind to ONYX with it after I get a little bit better. I'm still pretty trash on it relative to my mouse and keyboard skills, so I definitely want to get it more in line. It's probably going to take me a while, but I do notice that a lot of my big fundamentals, my big aiming fundamentals, my habits, those things, as long as I get a little bit more comfortable with my controller, those things shine through, and I think that those differentiate yourself. And I also think that I'm better on controller now, even with this little bit of time playing, than I ever was when I was playing before. And maybe that's because I got really good at aiming on mouse and keyboard, and you still can kind of transfer some of that to controller. That's what I'm guessing, and that's what I've heard from top tier players. Like, you can aim on one, you can aim on both. This is kind of just a little caveat to tell people that are on mouse and keyboard, hey, if you swap over to controller, it's gonna have some growing pains, but I think you'll be a lot better of an aimer than you were back when you were like 4 playing controller. So definitely something that's interesting, but I want to hear your experiences. Who of y'all have tried both? What are your opinions on it? How have you felt about it? Is there any tips and tricks you would give people when they are trying to adjust from one or the other? But yeah, next up, I'm going to get a little bit better in my controller, and then I'm going to try to play it in crossplay. I couldn't jump right in now because my crossplay is in ONYX, and I feel like I would just throw those games. I want to make sure I'm a little bit better before I throw other people's games. We'll go to the GameLeap website right now for in-depth map, tips and tricks, weapon guides. We got so much content on the GameLeap website that you just got to go check out right now down below. Thank you so much for coming by. Follow me at Twitter at CoachMillsOW. I love your faces, and I'll see you next time.